Can the mind really heal the body? And if so, is there any scientific evidence to convince skeptical physicians like me? These are the questions that fueled the last few years of my research. And what I discovered is that the scientific community, the medical establishment, has been proving for over 50 years that the mind can heal the body. We call it the placebo effect. And we've been trying to outsmart it for decades. But I actually think this is really good news. The placebo effect is excellent news because it's concrete evidence that the body holds within it innate self-repair mechanisms that can make unthinkable things happen to the body. So if you find this surprising, if you have a hard time believing that the body can heal itself, you need look no further than the Spontaneous Remission Project, a database compiled by the Institute of Noetic Sciences of over 3,500 case studies in the medical literature of patients who have gotten better from seemingly incurable illnesses. You think there's such a thing as an incurable illness? I swear, if you go look at this database, it'll blow your mind. Everything's in there. Stage 4 cancers that disappeared without treatment. HIV-positive patients that became HIV negative. Heart disease, kidney failure, diabetes, high blood pressure, thyroid disease, autoimmune diseases, gone.
If we take a look at everything in the universe, we know from a scientific perspective is made up of something called energy. So what do we know about the properties of energy? Number one, all energy has a vibration. All energy has a vibration. It emits a frequency.
We are frequency generators. If you get close to someone's skin, you can feel infrared energy being given off. If you look at them, you're seeing light energy given off. We now have scans where you can put a machine around somebody's head instead of putting the electrodes on their head and perceive and record the energy that their brain is giving off.
The most potent form of energy, by the way, is thought. It penetrates all space and all time. Every thought has a frequency. We can measure a thought. What most people don't understand is a thought has a biochemical and biological property. Every thought, which means it has a frequency. And so if you're thinking that thought over and over and over again, or if you're imagining in your mind, okay, having that brand new car, having the money that you need, building that company, finding your soulmate, if you imagine what that looks like, you're emitting that frequency on a consistent basis.
Interested in the molecular structure of water and what affects it. Now, water is the most receptive of the 4 elements. Mr. Emoto thought perhaps it would respond to non-physical events. So he set up a series of studies, applied mental stimuli, and photographed it with a microscope.
When we projected the feeling of love and thanks to water, it made the most beautiful crystal. Times like this, I think water is at peace.
This first picture is a picture of water from the Fujiwara Dam. And this picture is the same water after receiving a blessing from a Zen Buddhist monk. Now, in this next series of pictures, Mr. Emoto printed out words, taped them to bottles of distilled water, and let them out overnight. This first photograph is a picture of the pure distilled water, just the essence of itself. These subsequent photographs, as you can see, are each different. This is the chi of love. And we move along here to thank you. And you can see where he taped that to this bottle here. But if you read Japanese, you already knew that. Now, Mr. Emoto speaks of the thought or intent being the driving force in all of this. The science of how that actually affects the molecules is unknown, except to the water molecules, of course. And it's really fascinating when you keep in mind that 90% of our bodies are water.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? If thoughts can do that to water, imagine what our thoughts can do to us.
It's important to recognize that our body is really the product of our thoughts. We're beginning to understand in medical science the degree to which the nature of thoughts and emotions actually determines the physical substance and structure and function of our bodies.
Our thoughts create our body moment by moment. When we think positive thoughts, we release certain chemicals into our body. When we think negative thoughts, we release negative chemicals into our body. And those have a profound effect on how the cells are behaving and how the nutrition is being used.
Negative thoughts, stress, have been shown to seriously degrade the body and the functioning of the brain, because it's our thoughts and emotions that are continuously reassembling, reorganizing, recreating our body. Happier thoughts lead to essentially a happier biochemistry, a happier, healthier body.
Well, we come with a basic program. It's called self-healing. You get a wound, it grows back together. You get a bacterial infection, the immune system comes and takes care of those bacteria and heals it up. The immune system is made to heal itself. Remove physiological stress from the body, and the body does what it was designed to do. It heals itself.
Did you know that 90% of all illnesses are caused by the mind? Let's think about this for a second. If the mind can cause an illness, don't you think it can heal those illnesses too? Well, it can. You're going to discover a natural phenomenon known as mind-body healing and how it holds the key to a healthier, happier, more vitalized you. You can be free from disease, stress, depression, and anxiety. Manage without pharmaceuticals, prescriptions, and drugs. You were born with the ability to heal yourself. You're going to discover a set of techniques that are being used by millions of people to live their perfect life. One free from stress, pain, and poor health, without the need for pharmaceuticals, prescriptions, and drugs, because you were born a healer.
Mind, intention, belief. Can these factors influence healing?
If you think you have an incurable disease, if you think it yourself, you are right. If you think your problem is curable, then you are also right. It all depends on your intention.
When you think about intention, what is intention? And how does intention play a role in healing? Intention plays a role when you think about how our thoughts and our emotions and our cognitions influence our immune system and our endocrine system. And we know that this happens. We know that people who feel a tremendous amount of stress, for example, have a diminished capacity in terms of their immune system's functioning.
It's been discovered in the laboratory over the last 15 or 20 years, for example, that intention does have physical effects.
We know from all the amazing, amazing evidence that has been amassed by people like Dean Radin and Marilyn Schlitz. And Marilyn I also want to honor because she was one of the first people out there to do direct mental influence on living systems. The first person, among the first people to do really good studies of how mind affects other living systems. But there have been studies showing that we can affect everything from machinery to single-cell studies to full-fledged human beings. Many, many, many thousands of studies. That's why I have to laugh when people talk about there being no evidence. Somebody said that the field was based on Star Wars, nothing more than Star Wars. And I wanted to send them those 50 pages of notes and bibliography and say, you know, tell me that this is science fiction. We know from a lot of studies that it's actually a something. You know that phrase, a thought is a thing. More properly, we should be saying a thought is a thing that affects other things because it's affecting things at every moment. It's an energy we've actually been able to measure.
There was a fabulous experiment done at McGill University in Canada a few years back in which the goal was to see if water that had been prayed over and blessed would stimulate the growth of young seedlings more than plants that were watered with water that had not been blessed through prayer. Sure enough, the plants that received the water that had been prayed over and blessed had a more vigorous growth rate. Over and over, we see around the world where water seems to play a major role in healing.
Type of random number generator experiment that's been conducted many, many times, hundreds of times, over the past 4 decades or so, since around the 1960s, has been a random generator that only produces sequences of random bits, zeros and ones, like flipping coins. And you would simply ask somebody to press a button, it would produce 200 bits. And you would ask them to say, well, try to make it produce more 1 bits than 0 bits. And when you take the entire body of literature, all of the hundreds of experiments that have been done, you can ask a single question. Did it matter that people were trying to push it towards ones or push it towards zeros? And the overall answer is yes, it does matter. That somehow intention is correlated with the operation, with the output of these random number generators, such that if you wish for more ones, somehow the generators produce more ones.
So now we've run 3 germination experiments, and we just ran one with my group on Thursday. And with this, we've tried to send intention to make seeds grow a bit faster. And we had 3 other sets of seeds. And we found, when Gary did the analysis with special statistics, that all 3 so far, we don't have the results yet for Thursday, also had an effect. The seeds sprouted much faster than the control seeds. How about that? In one case, it was 100 people in Rhinebeck, New York, sending intention to the seeds in the University of Arizona. Just 100 people. And we had a giant, significant effect. That's what they were like. We just sent intention to some seeds like that. And our intention was very specific, for them to sprout at least 3 inches by the 4th day of growing. It's always important to be very specific with intention.
This leads naturally to wonder, are people affecting the world of reality that they see? You betcha they are. Every single one of us affects the reality that we see, even if we try to hide from that and play victim. We all are doing it.
So, for example, we recently conducted a study where we recruited couples, one of whom had cancer. And we took the partner of the cancer patient and we trained them in what we call the Compassionate Intention Program. And so they were invited in to participate in a training program. A lot of it had to do with meditation, it had to do with heart opening, it had to do with subtle energies. And we took them through this training program, and then we asked them to go home and continue to practice this intervention for 8 weeks. We brought them back and we put them in our laboratory, and we monitored the patient in one room, and we put them in a 2,000-pound electromagnetically shielded room so that there was no possibility of electromagnetic fields or the partner of the cancer patient talking to them on their radio, on their cell phone, and saying, okay, breathe deeply now. We could rule out any of those kind of conventional explanations. Meanwhile, the partner who'd gone through the training program sat in another room and watched the image of their loved one on a closed-circuit television screen. And then at random times throughout the session, they were asked to send loving, compassionate intention to the patient. The idea was to see if we could find correlations between the intention of the one person and the physiological activity of the other. What we found is that there was a significant correlation in the physiological activity of this person and the physiological activity of the other. This suggests that there is some way in which information is transferred that isn't accountable by the conventional Newtonian model of cause and effect. You know, the partner of the cancer patient wasn't coming in and whispering in their partner's ear, calm down now. You know, quite the contrary. They were at a distance, and there was no way that the two people knew when this kind of interaction was happening, and yet it happened.
Sending an intention that I am better, sending information with belief that I am better, is sending information to the body to correct itself. Because as we say, a thought is an actual physical energy too, and it sends information to the body as well. When I was 15 years old, I had a very serious motorcycle accident. I was on a motorcycle I shouldn't have been on, and we were hit by a car that caused a very serious wound in my leg, ended up with 66 stitches. And then as I was facing a very serious outcome, they talked about the possibility of having to amputate part of my leg. I remember laying with a cast from my hip down to my ankle and thinking about how to rally my immune system through my thoughts such that I could promote healing in my leg. And so I would lay on the couch and I would visualize my immune system, and I could feel it tingling. I could feel the healing happening in my leg. And I didn't come from a medical family. I have no idea at all where this idea came from. But somehow it was noetic. It came directly to me that that was what I needed to do. And ultimately they took the cast off, and I'm a two-legged creature still, thank goodness. And so I think that there was something about, my own personal experience with that healing, that there was something about recognizing that my mind was important to my body, and my body was important to my mind, that I just knew intuitively.
Mastering mind-body healing all comes down to your beliefs, your expectations, and a well-known theory called the placebo effect. The placebo effect is a scientifically debated phenomenon of the power of the mind over the body. But what is it? A placebo is a simulated treatment that gives no apparent medical benefit. Common placebos include the use of fake tablets such as sugar pills or sham surgery. It is simply that, the planting of an idea in a patient's head that they are and will be getting better.
Traditional Western medicine typically attributes spontaneous or miraculous healing to placebo. But what exactly is the placebo effect?
The placebo effect is the fact that a belief that a person has can override their biology. Well, it's so profoundly important that science has recognized that at least 1/3 of all healings, including drugs and surgery and other allopathic interventions, 1/3 of all healings has nothing to do with the process, but has to do with the placebo effect. That a person believes that the process is going to heal them and heals themselves in spite of the fact that maybe the pill was a sugar pill or the operation was just a sham and wasn't real. And why this becomes important is this clearly 1/3 of all healings occurs without anybody doing anything other than having a positive thought.
But the placebo effect is not just this subjective thing in our minds. It actually causes measurable chemical changes in the brain. And not only that, but substantial physiological changes throughout the body. And this is what leads to people getting healed, getting better when they take a placebo.
So the scientific literature, the medical journals like the New England Journal of Medicine and the Journal of the American Medical Association, these scientific journals are full of evidence that the placebo effect and the nocebo effect are incredibly powerful. We've known this since the 1950s, and we've seen countless case studies that show that in almost everything you study, if you give people a fake treatment, a sugar pill, a saline injection, or most effectively a fake surgery, 18 to 80% of the time, people get better. And it's not just in their mind. That's what I thought in the beginning, like, oh, they're just feeling better, they're thinking better. But it's not. It's actually in their physiology. This is measurable. You can actually see what happens to the body. So, for example, patients getting placebos were found to have ulcers that healed, colons that became less inflamed, bronchi that dilated, warts that disappeared. Cells looked different under the microscope. It's provable. It's happening in the body, even though it's initiated by the mind.
It's been very well demonstrated that our belief system affects how we behave and how we perform. And it also affects our lifestyle. So if we don't believe that we can help ourselves, we probably cannot. If we don't believe that positive information is useful to our health and well-being, then it probably won't be.
Probably the most essential aspect of healing is to believe in the modality you're using and to stay positive in some way. There's so much evidence about belief in a system of medicine being crucial to the effectiveness of that. Belief itself is the body's strongest medicine. And if you believe something is going to work, regardless of what that is, it's going to work for you.
The question that's frequently asked is when a person has manifested a disease in their body temple or some kind of discomfort in their life, through the power of right thinking, can it be turned around? And the answer is absolutely yes.
On November 23rd, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I truly believed in my heart, with my strong faith, that I was already healed. During the day, all day long, I would just say, thank you for my healing. On and on and on I went, thank you for my healing. I believed in my heart I was healed. I saw myself as if cancer was never in my body. One of the things I did to heal myself was to watch very funny movies. That's all we would do, is just laugh, laugh, laugh. We couldn't afford to put any stress in my life because we knew stress was one of the worst things you can do while you're trying to heal yourself. From the time I was diagnosed, which was November 23rd, to the time I was healed totally was approximately 3 months. And that's without radiation and chemotherapy.
So if you find this surprising, if you have a hard time believing that the body can heal itself, you need look no further than the Spontaneous Remission Project, a database compiled by the Institute of Noetic Sciences of over 3,500 case studies in the medical literature of patients who have gotten better from seemingly incurable illnesses. You think there's such a thing as an incurable illness? I swear, if you go look at this database, it'll blow your mind. Everything's in there. Stage 4 cancers that disappeared without treatment. HIV-positive patients that became HIV negative. Heart disease, kidney failure, diabetes, high blood pressure, thyroid disease, autoimmune diseases, gone. Because it's concrete evidence that the body holds within it innate self-repair mechanisms that can make unthinkable things happen to the body.
If somebody is in a situation where they're sick and they have an alternative to try to explore what is in their mind creating it versus using medicine, if it's an acute situation that could bring death to them, then obviously the medicine is a wise thing to do while they explore what the mind is about. So you don't want to negate medicine. Every form of healing has a place.
I was diagnosed with cancer, and it was vaginal cancer. And when you look back at my childhood, with the rapes and all the other childhood abuse, and you realize that one of the mental causes for cancer is resentment, deep resentment that is held very strong till it literally eats away in the body. So where would I put my cancer? So I remember being very terrified, like anybody would, and I called my teacher and I said, Eric, they say I have cancer. And the first thing he said to me is, who is they? And I said, the doctors. And he said, Louise, you could not have done all this work on yourself to die of cancer. Now let's take a positive approach. And I clung to that. It was a lifeline for me. And I did things I hadn't done before. I went from being a junk food person to doing nutritional work and detoxifying my body, and I was detoxifying my mind, and I did a lot of things. I had tools to work with. And I said to myself, you're being given an opportunity to practice what you're teaching. You're telling people that they can heal anything if they're willing to do the work, and now it's your turn. I remember working with a therapist and banging pillows and, you know, getting anger out and all that stuff. But I think that the work I did at the time that was the most important for me was to do forgiveness. And I began to investigate the childhoods of my parents. And when I discovered their stories, I could understand where they were coming from. There was just horrendous things on both sides, all sides. So how could they know how to treat a little child when they weren't treated that well themselves? So as I began to do the forgiveness work and the therapy and the nutrition and everything, within 6 months, I was able to get the medical establishment to agree with what I already knew inside, that I no longer had cancer. And when that happened, I knew that anything could be healed. I knew because I had done it myself. And all the other stuff helped, but I knew that all the affirmations and all the stuff I was doing. So that gave me an extraordinarily strong belief. And when you have a strong belief, you can do anything.
I was diagnosed with a condition inside of my body where a doctor told me that something was growing, a cancerous tumor that shouldn't be there. And I trusted the medical system because that's our culture, that's the way we're raised. And there's a part of us that says, even if I go the holistic route, I'm going to let a medical person tell me what's going on just for that validation. So it was my opportunity to put into practice everything that I ever learned. And rather than concentrating on something that should not be in my body, I began feeling that my body was vital and healthy rather than focusing on making something change. However, through the influence of family and friends, I underwent a medical procedure anyway. I went into the operating room, I was anesthetized, and the next thing I remember, I woke up. And there was a doctor looking at me, and he said, "What are you doing here? There's nothing there." All I'd done were the practices and the principles that I'd traveled halfway around the world to learn, and I employed it in my own life, and it worked in that moment. I have the photographs showing there's nothing in my body. I was anesthetized, and they did an exploratory for no reason at all. Because of that, I can speak with conviction. I can look anyone, a scientist, a doubting audience member, and I can look them in the eye with conviction and say, this is what I know to be true in my life, that there's a power inside of your body. The ancients say it's the most powerful force in the universe. The philosopher Neville, early in the 20th century, said that there's a power inside of every human against which no earthly force is of the slightest consequence.
The key to using the mind to heal the body is to imagine the same thing over and over and over again. And the power of this was actually demonstrated by a Harvard study, which is affectionately called the piano study. And volunteers basically played a combination of piano notes that went plonk, 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 over and over and over again, 2 hours straight on 5 consecutive days. Brain scans taken every single day. By the end of the 5th day, the area of the brain connected to the finger muscles had massively expanded in size. But this is where it gets amazing, because another group of people, instead of physically playing the notes, they had to just imagine them. So they had to imagine going plonk, 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 again, over and over and over again for 2 hours straight, again on 5 consecutive days. But incredibly, the areas of the brain connected to these finger muscles was also substantially larger. In fact, you couldn't even tell the difference between who had actually played the notes and who had just done it in their minds. The phenomenon is well known, it's called neuroplasticity. It describes how your mind, how your thoughts and emotions impact the physical structure of your brain.
There have been other studies looking at if there's any difference between going to the gym and thinking about going to the gym. And with this study, they took a group of people and they sent half to the gym to work on their biceps, and the other half were allowed to sit in their armchairs and just think about going to the gym and working on their biceps. And they still recorded a very strong effect in the group who had just sat in their armchairs. The couch potatoes still built up their biceps. So the body really can't distinguish between, action and thought.
I truly believed in my heart, with my strong faith, that I was already healed.
Sending an intention that I am better, sending information with belief that I am better, is sending information to the body to correct itself. Because as we say, a thought is an actual physical energy too. And it sends information to the body as well.
So when you look at these, some of the studies are just amazing. I love the Rogaine study. So, you get a bunch of bald men, you give them placebos, they grow hair. The opposite is also true. So if you give people a placebo and you tell them it's chemotherapy, they vomit and they lose their hair. So this is really happening in the body.
There was a study in Houston of some patients going through a knee operation for arthritis. Half actually went through an operation where they were worked on for their arthritis. The other half were given a sham operation where they just opened the knee and then closed it and did nothing. They found over 3 years of follow-up that both sets of patients reported having no pain. So the patients where nothing was done to them still reported being pain-free. Their arthritis was gone. Belief itself is the body's strongest medicine. And if you believe something is going to work, regardless of what that is, it's going to work for you.
Because of that, I can speak with conviction. I can look anyone, a scientist, a doubting audience member, and I can look them in the eye with conviction and say, this is what I know to be true in my life, that there's a power inside of your body. The ancients say it's the most powerful force in the universe. The philosopher Neville, early in the 20th century, said that there's a power inside of every human against which no earthly force is of the slightest consequence.
During the day, all day long, I would just say, thank you for my healing. On and on and on I went, thank you for my healing.
I have an interview that I'm going to air pretty soon with Dr. Glenn Ryan, in which he proved on a microbiological level with molecular genetics that the DNA molecule changes its form based on the energy that you send to it with your consciousness. And when you send the emotion of gratitude, that was the one word that he found was the most important one. Gratitude, more than anything else, heals damaged DNA. You can kill DNA by what's called a heat fix, and it unwinds. And by the sense of loving gratitude, the DNA rewinds and comes back together.
So they designed an experiment to test precisely this theory. This is no surprise. They took some human DNA and they isolated the DNA and asked individuals that were trained to feel what are called coherent human emotions, very clear emotions of love, appreciation, compassion, or anger, rage, and hate, to have those feelings on demand. And as the people who were trained to have the feelings did so, they measured the way the DNA responded. And what they found was this. They found that in the presence of appreciation, love, compassion, forgiveness, the DNA became tremendously relaxed. And what we know from other experiments is that this relaxed state of DNA actually enhances our immune response. When you ask people what it is about the feelings of love and compassion that give us our high immune response, this may begin to tell us why, because the DNA is relaxed and actually allows certain portions of those little switches, if you want to think of them that way, to be enabled or turned on. And just the opposite is true as well. In the presence of anger, rage, hate, jealousy, DNA was tightened like a little knot, and it actually shut down in some instances. Those little switches depleted the immune response. Intuitively, we know this. We know that when people live in a state of jealousy or anger or rage, that depresses those portions of our bodies, and just the opposite, love, compassion, understanding, forgiveness, that those kinds of things are enhanced. And now, perhaps for the first time, these experiments are beginning to help us to understand why. It's the effect of human emotion on what is called the conformation or the shape of the DNA in our bodies. And what these experiments showed, and what the lab results, the lab notes in the published papers actually described, was that very specific kinds of human emotion have the power to change the shape of the DNA in our bodies. This is an amazing thing to say, because what it says is that on demand, when we choose to elicit very specific kinds of feelings and emotions inside of our bodies, we actually have the power to change the way the DNA functions in our bodies. This is the beginning of an internal technology, perhaps a very ancient technology that was described in languages of our past that we're only beginning to understand.
Our physiology creates disease to give us feedback, to let us know we have an imbalanced perspective and we're not loving and we're not grateful. So the body's signs and symptoms are not something terrible.
But surprising research offers some good news about your health on this day of gratitude. Giving thanks really can pay off. New York Times science columnist John Tierney is with us. John, good morning.
Good morning.
Gratitude, this is a very big word, but it's also a very powerful thing, isn't it?
Right. I mean, psychologists love Thanksgiving because there's a ton of evidence that just giving thanks, being grateful is good for you. I mean, it makes you happier and more optimistic. It makes you kinder to other people, and it even improves your physical health. I mean, it's weird that the more you count your blessings today, the more blessings you'll have in the future. It almost sounds like a Ponzi scheme. But it seems to work. There's really a lot of evidence.
And you're saying, let's talk about this evidence. There's really science behind this?
Yeah, they've done lots of experiments, some of them in which people keep a gratitude journal where they'll write down 5 things that they're grateful for, and just once a week. And then a couple months later, they found that those people are happier, they're more optimistic about life, they have fewer physical problems, they're exercising more, they're just feeling better about life in general.
It can also have an impact on relationships, can it?
Right, it makes people nicer to each other. I mean, gratitude, it's an emotion that takes you outside yourself, and it makes you think about your relationships with other people. And as a result, people tend to be nicer. They've done experiments where when people just do a small act of gratitude, later on when they have a chance to, when someone is aggressive against them, they're nicer about it. They don't retaliate quite as strongly. And that could be a big help at the Thanksgiving table.
Well, yeah, I want to know, we're talking about the Thanksgiving table here, is how do you have this conversation with your kids? How do you engage your children to be more grateful? And you're saying it has real benefits for them.
Right. I mean, there's some evidence, that it makes them happier and it makes them get better grades in school. I mean, having them count their blessings, just think what they're grateful for, have them write thank you notes, and not just for presents. I mean, just writing a note, it's a great exercise for child or adult to just write a letter to someone who did something nice for you. You might even deliver it to them. But, I mean, kids today spend so much time often thinking about stuff they don't have. They want the latest gadget, the latest clothes. If they can focus more on what they do have, they'll be happier.
Everything you do changes your DNA, and then that can change the DNA of your children. Anthony here for D-News, and you've probably heard of epigenetics. This is the idea that while the structure of your DNA doesn't change, parts of it can be turned on and off through chemical changes in your body. It's called DNA expression, and it has a lot to do with your behavior and lifestyle. So smoking and eating too much can make the genes for obesity in your body express themselves strongly. Psychological trauma and highly stressful events can affect the genes that control the brain receptor for oxytocin, which is this hormone associated with love and trust. People who sleep poorly for just a week can show changes in 700 genes. Now, the good news is that the opposite is also true. So leading a healthy life can cause your body to turn on beneficial genes. You can also reduce the genetic risk for diseases that are hereditary in your family. There's even an idea that you pass those changes on to your children.
I believed in my heart I was healed. I saw myself as if cancer was never in my body.
I took the visualization process from the Apollo program and instituted it during the 1980s and 90s into the Olympic program. And it was called visual motor rehearsal. When you visualize, then you materialize. And the interesting thing about the mind is we took Olympic athletes and then hooked them up to sophisticated biofeedback equipment and had them run their event only in their mind. Incredibly, the same muscles fired in the same sequence when they were running the race in their mind as when they were running it on the track. How could this be? Because the mind can't distinguish whether you're really doing it or whether it's just a practice. I think if you've been there in the mind, you'll go there in the body.
A beach in sunlight, a field in flower, a whole and healthy body. Powerful images that mean something different to all of us. Slices of imagination that have the power to help us heal.
I can really feel in my whole body how healthy that kind of energy is.
Dr. Martin Rossman is a pioneer in a therapeutic technique called interactive guided imagery. It's a healing force that he believes lives in each of us.
What's so beautiful about it is that people draw on their own experience in their own data bank, and they will imagine themselves going to a place that is truly peaceful, beautiful, relaxing as they know it to them.
Guided imagery is the art of focusing and directing the imagination.
If I say, let an image come to mind for how your body will heal from this, and they imagine a little repair crew that comes in and is fixing the disc in their back, or they're imagining a crew of knights on horseback that are chasing away the bad guys, which are the cancer cells, or they're imagining being held in the arms of God and they feel perfectly protected and totally healed. The power of it is so much more palpable. It's so real to them.
A nurse called and said, we have a program to send people guided imagery tapes, and yours is in the mail, and we'd like you to listen to it several times before your surgery. There seems to be evidence that people who do this have a better experience. My surgical experience and the experience right after were amazing. I mean, my doctors were just astounded. I had no nausea. I was really calm going into surgery. When I came out, I really had no pain.
There's been research about all these things now for years of people who prepare mentally, and it usually involves guided imagery, and prepare in the right way, and it's pretty simple. Come through surgery with 50% the complications, with 50% the bleeding, with less pain. They get out of the hospital a day and a half earlier. The procedures go more easily. It's really quite astounding.
Where the piano study and the flexing the finger study refers to the impact of the brain and even your mind on the muscles, I'm absolutely convinced that the things that you imagine over and over and over and over and over again impact the internal condition of the body. And I'm convinced of that because I've communicated with several hundred people who've healed themselves of serious illness. And I said to them, what did you do? And amazingly, a very high percentage of them, probably in excess of 90%, did exactly the same thing. So let's take cancer, for example. People actually imagine the internal condition of the body. They imagine they're right beside the tumour. And they imagine what that might look like to them. So let's take this example. Come here, check this out. I happen to have a handful of coffee beans here, because I love the taste of coffee. Now, very popularly, people imagine actually dismantling a tumour. So, for example, people getting chemo for cancer would actually imagine the chemo agents coming in like little Pac-Men or piranha and dismantling the tumour, cell by cell or part by part, and gradually dismantling it. You know, it's getting smaller and smaller. The little Pac-Men, the piranha fish, are eating it cell by cell, section by section, until what you have at the end is it's completely and absolutely gone. And that's the key. You had something at the start and you've got nothing at the end. And they do this over and over and over again. Now some people even imagine that instead of piranha, you've got, if you're taking radiotherapy, that's bolts of lightning that are destroying, that are detonating and dismantling the tumour. You have to think. So this is the sort of things you think about. You imagine something at the start, however way you want to imagine it, and then you imagine it at the end where it's not there anymore. And you imagine turning it from having something into nothing there, and you do it over and over and over and over again until finally you're given the all clear by your physician, by your doctor. You're told, you're better now. Your mind can heal your body.
One of the things I did to heal myself was to watch very funny movies. That's all we would do, is just laugh, laugh, laugh. We couldn't afford to put any stress in my life because we knew stress was one of the worst things you can do while you're trying to heal yourself.
Did you know that 90% of all illnesses are caused by the mind? Let's think about this for a second. If the mind can cause an illness, don't you think it can heal those illnesses too? Well, it can.
So proverb says that laughter is the best medicine, and if you think about it, it really is. Laughter decreases stress, inflammation, and blood sugar in your body, and it boosts your immune system, your heart health, and your entire fitness.
There's this interesting thing that happens when somebody gets it, really downloads a more positive way of thinking. They get hormonal balancing, for one thing. We know that when somebody is thinking with their heart, like they see a puppy or a sleeping baby, and they go, oh, your DHEA levels rise, which begins to balance your hormones, but something else really more important happens, and that is the beat-to-beat variability of the heart normalizes. And you get into this wave pattern that you can see on a heart rate monitor that actually begins to balance the entire body, given that the heart is a huge electromagnet that in fact trains the rest of the body. So this thought or this state of deep relaxation or whatever it is that enlightens you actually results in a decrease in stress hormones, a normalization of blood sugar, decreasing of blood pressure, and a relaxation of all smooth muscles. It is, in fact, a balance of the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic is the brake, and sympathetic is the gas. And most people in this culture have the gas on all the time with an occasional brake. So you're going around like this. When both are in balance, you can work so much more efficiently and so much longer because you've got this beautiful yin-yang balance.
With the results of a wide range of recent studies, Carter visits schools, gives parenting classes, has written a book, and publishes a blog all about the benefits of raising happy children.
What we know now is that if what we want is for our children to be high achievers, to be good learners, if we want what we want for ourselves is to be successful in life, one of the best things that we can do is to focus on our emotional well-being.
So what I found in the medical data is that relationships matter. People who have a strong social network have half the rate of heart disease compared to those who are lonely. Married people are twice as likely to live long lives than unmarried people. In fact, curing your loneliness may be the most important measure of prevention you can enact upon your body, more so than quitting smoking or starting to exercise. Your spiritual life matters. Those who attend religious services live up to 14 years longer. Your professional life matters. You really can work yourself to death. So they did one study and they found that people who fail to take their vacation are actually a third more likely to get heart disease. Your attitude really matters. Happy people live 7 to 10 years longer than unhappy people. And optimists are 77% less likely to get heart disease than pessimists.
Make an emotional shift, let's say we go from frustration to joy, those kind of emotional shifts, about 1,400 biochemical changes instantly go off in the body. Now, if you think about the course of one day, all the emotions that we feel, the highs and the lows, and the myriad of emotional textures that occur through our perceptions during a day, you can see that emotions are creating lots and lots of changes in our physiology. So it makes a lot of sense to start paying attention to the emotional diet as well as to the physical diet. That's one of the keys to better health and certainly to slowing down the aging process. Strong negative emotions just degenerate us. Positive emotional states regenerate us. Become simple math. Feel more love, more care, more appreciation, and your health's got a better chance of improving and staying that way.
Disease cannot live in a body that's in a healthy emotional state.
From the time I was diagnosed, which was November 23rd, to the time I was healed totally was approximately 3 months. And that's without radiation and chemotherapy.
I've seen kidneys regenerated. I've seen cancer dissolved. I've seen eyesight improve and come back.
I always say that incurable means curable from within.
You can change your life and you can heal yourself.
Well, my story begins on March 10, 1981. It really changed my whole life. It was a day I'll never forget. I crashed an airplane. I ended up in the hospital completely paralyzed. My spinal cord was crushed. I broke the first and second cervical vertebrae. My swallowing reflex was destroyed. I couldn't eat or drink. My diaphragm was destroyed. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was blink my eyes. The doctor, of course, said all my life I'd be a vegetable. All I'd do is blink my eyes the rest of my life. That's the picture they saw of me, but it didn't matter what they thought. The main thing was what I thought. I picture myself being a normal person again, walking out of that hospital. The only thing I had to work with in the hospital was my mind. As long as you have your mind, you can put things back together again. I was hooked to a respirator, and they said I'd never breathe on my own again because my diaphragm was destroyed. But this little voice kept saying to me, breathe deep, breathe deep. Finally, I was weaned from it. They were at a loss for an explanation. See, I could not afford to allow anything to come in my mind that would distract me from my goal and from my vision. Well, I set a goal to walk out of the hospital on Christmas. That was my goal. Months later, I walked out of the hospital on my own 2 feet. They said it couldn't be done. That's a day I will never forget. For people that are sitting out there right now watching this program that are hurting, if I wanted to sum up my life and sum up for people what they can do in life, I would sum it up this way in 6 words. Man becomes what he thinks about.